The French destroyer line received a buff in World of Warships Legends. Not in the current update we're in, but in the update prior, and I just never got around to talking about it. That changes today. We're going to take a look at the legendary tier French destroyer Kleber, which was one of the best beneficiaries of this buff. And we're going to look at it across two games, neither of which are especially impressive in terms of damage done, but both of which are demonstrations of good destroyer play, and they also show sort of how the buff works in action. The buff is very simple. Instead of having only one charge of the main battery reload booster, the French were given two at base. And when that happened, my initial impression was, well, this doesn't seem like it's enough. The French destroyers are supposed to be a pretty good gunboat line, and they just weren't prior to this buff. But the reason they were a good gunboat line on PC is because at base, all of them got 4 main battery reload booster consumables, and you could get a 5th by speccing the appropriate commander skill. And the fact that these French destroyers could use those reload boosters, well, that is what made them good effective gunboats. 2 of them on Legends just wasn't cutting it, but you can see I don't have 2, I have 4, and I'll explain that between the two games we're going to take a look at. For now, we spotted the Z46 in the center of the epicenter. He's not quite in the middle ring, but you can see the Kleber is excellent at shredding destroyers. We're able to take 11,000 hit points away from that Z46 and counting. He's still got a fire burning on him with the use of one of our main battery reload boosters, and we still have 3 left. You can see the cooldown time on them, by the way, isn't all that bad either. It's just over 2 minutes. There are some torpedoes that take longer to reload, so it doesn't necessarily hurt to spec into extra reload boosters. The way you do that, though, isn't straightforward, and we will get to it, I promise. But that means, theoretically, you can probably use all 4 of these reload boosters in a game. I don't think we're going to get the opportunity in either of these games, but we're going to use more than 2 for sure, at least in the second game and maybe here. In any case, I think we should talk about what just happened because it's important. We found that Z46 in the center of this ring here, but of course he had teammates around us, and when we were spotted, they were shooting. So we ran away, and we lost about 6,000 hit points in the process or so. That's fine. The Z46 is much more hurt than we are, and he has been able to secure both outer rings of the capture circle in the time that we were out of the cap. We're now back in it. We catch the Z46. He's got absolutely no HP left, and obviously we don't need a reload booster for this one. He goes down as first blood 4 minutes into the game, which I appreciate, honestly. It's something that you don't see happen too often. But with the Z46 dispatched, that means all of the capture rings on this map are completely clear, and we should be able to take them. Reversing out of the center one here, and actually I don't think I noticed, but I don't end up taking the very center of the epicenter in this moment. I take both of the outer rings, and maybe it happens here. I'm reversing into the center. There's a Wooster over there that we can't quite see. We're trying to get vision of him again so that hopefully our teammates can shoot at him, and we want to stay out of his radar range, because if he reveals us, then of course he is going to stop us from taking the cap, and the Wooster is sailing away. I'm not sure why I decided to open fire on him at this moment. As you can see, I don't have the center ring, and I could have just waited to completely secure it, but I opened fire on the Wooster, trying to test out the Kleber's AP, which is absolutely phenomenal at long range. We're not getting great results, though, on the Wooster. I mean, okay, to be fair, the AP is doing a fair bit of damage, but we're not getting any citadels, and we failed to take the center of the epicenter, so we're going to have to turn around and remedy that situation. But right now we have the win conditions set up. There are no red ships in the center. They're not even so much as contesting it. So as long as we continue to hold the majority of the rings, we're going to accrue the majority of points, and we're going to be far, far ahead on points. Unfortunately, my team is not going to do the best job of staying alive, but at this point, I've realized my error in not taking the center of the map, and I am slowly reversing toward it. I don't know where the other destroyer is, but obviously it's not in the ring. And, well, we haven't quite made it to reverse in. Maybe this is the point where I realize, oh no, I've forgotten to take the center, and now I'm going to turn around. I think I might want to get vision of the battleship and the cruiser, the Musashi and the Ibuki that are over there. We do have a fire burning on the Musashi. And to some degree, now that I have all these reload boosters on the Kleber, you can play it as a gunboat, and you can farm battleships. It's pretty good at that. It's got a great fire chance. We see the gearing, though, and basically our entire plan changes. The gearing may be outside of the circle, but we're going to turn all the way around, and we're going to sort of follow him from inside the circle. Doesn't look like he's really going to make an attempt at capping. Rather, I think his goal is to get around behind the battleships that are over to the left of my ship and maybe get some torpedoes on them. So, if we can, we'd like to intercept him before he can do that, but we are finally going to turn around and correct our terrible mistake of not taking the center. We've got our torpedoes looking at the Pommern, and I suppose this is a good opportunity to talk about the torpedoes, which, in addition to being granted one more charge, the main battery reload booster consumable, a lot of these French destroyers had their torpedoes nerfed. And I think for the Kleber, the nerf was simply the maximum torpedo damage was reduced. The torpedoes still do a fair amount of damage, and they still have a 6-kilometer range, so you can use them. You just have to be pretty careful about it. That's when the Wooster finally pushes in, and he radars us. He's got almost no HP left. We're going to try to switch to AP and take his broadside, but here we're going to use our 3rd out of 4 main battery reload boosters, get a couple shots on the Ibuki. Unfortunately, maybe the Ibuki is aware that the Kleber's AP is fantastic. He turns in angles, so we have to stop shooting, and we've nearly taken the cap. We're going to silence our guns now so that we go dark. We don't want to continue to be shot, and we'll launch some more torpedoes at the Ibuki instead. But we really want to go deal with the gearing now. So we're going to sail in his last known direction, still missing a couple shots from the enemy ships. Looks like they're going to push into the capture circle, which is a bit of a problem, but the gearing is much more of a problem. The rest of my remaining teammates are all concentrated up into the same corner, practically in the same grid square, which is questionable positioning at best, but that means that they're all going to be vulnerable to the gearing. And the Ibuki apparently has thought better of his push straight into the cap. It looks like he's stopped there. Our torpedoes might have dissuaded him from going further. And I want you to take note, by the way, before we spot the gearing, of my damage total. It's absolutely not impressive. It's 50,000 damage, but keep in mind, we took away the majority of the Z-46's HP, and the gearing is left. He doesn't have all of his HP, but what he does have, we're going to take the rest of it. And dealing damage to destroyers, of course, is extremely lucrative, as is taking capture circles, and you'll note that I also have 3 capture ribbons. So when we come around the corner, we get sight of the gearing, we shoot him. Of course, the Kleber's HE maximum damage is excellent. When you get all the shells to hit, they absolutely rip other destroyers apart. So it kind of doesn't matter so much that the reload time at base for these guns is not spectacular. The maximum damage does seem to make up for it a little bit. Now we just have to get sight of the gearing once more, and we should be able to take him down. We'll still have both destroyers left alive on my team. There's the gearing. We take him down, and at this point we think, okay, we can just start farming some of these enemy ships over here, and we are now ahead on kills, so all is well. But of course, I wasn't really thinking about the gearing torpedoes. Huge mistake on my part, actually. I should have known and predicted they were coming and taken appropriate action. Unfortunately, I didn't. We only have 901 hit points left, and we were still spotted, so the Yamato shoots and kills us, and that's the end of our game. But I'm showing it to you, and now we're going to actually take a detour. Between this game and the second, I switched my build. I'm using Azerlane Saint-Louis, who is in fact a cruiser commander, and I'm switching out one of my inspirations for Mordov to William Sims. A little bit about this build, of course. Obviously, this is a premium commander. You can only get her if you already bought her, and it's a cruiser commander, but its skills can work on a destroyer. The skill in the 4th row gives you another charge of the main battery reload booster, and I think reduces the time that consumable takes to cool down. Plus, you can get fully packed in the legendary row of skills. So not only does that give you 2 extra reload boosters, it also gives you an extra engine boost. And of course, this commander has the Go All Out skill, which when you pop the engine boost, your concealment goes down. Now you have 3 of them instead of 2. So there's a good case to be made to use this commander on the Kleber. Her base trait likewise reduces the reload time on the guns, not by a huge percentage, but by a small percentage, and it reduces the reload time of any class of ship's guns, so it applies to destroyers as well. Then you've got extra fire chance on these guns, and the fire chance is already great. And the rest of the skills, they don't necessarily tremendously help the Kleber. The fire chance is nice, Go All Out is nice, and of course the skill that gives you extra main battery reload boosters is the key. The big problem with that build, though, is in the legendary row of skills. Really, fully packed is the only choice, and if you choose fully packed, that means you don't have the unstoppable skill. Of course, Azerlane San Louis as a cruiser commander does not come equipped with the unstoppable skill, but unstoppable is, I think, more or less a mandatory skill on destroyers. It allows you to still move even after your engine has been taken out, and your engine being taken out is something that happens a lot in destroyers if you get shot at. So you don't want to be dead in the water. You still want to maintain mobility, and not having unstoppable means you can't. So that means if you are going to utilize this build, which, as you'll see from this game, can be utilized to pretty good effect, then you have to be careful, especially if you're going to get into protracted gunfights. You want to make sure you're taking them at range. You want to get as far away from the thing shooting you as possible while still being able to maintain effective fire on them, because if they shoot you and take out your engine or damage your steering gears, you're absolutely dead in the water. The only way you can remedy that is with the DCP, and sometimes that's going to be on cooldown. In any case, we're completely alone on this flank. The rest of our team has moved over to Charlie and Alpha, and there's a couple people in the center. Questionable positioning at best, for sure, but since we spawned on Alpha, we elected to play the cap. If we had not come to this flank, by the way, and this is saying this with the benefit of hindsight, but if we had not come to this flank, I don't think we would have won this game. There's going to be a Musashi on our team who gets a Kraken, which GG to him, and he gets a lot of XP, and he probably thinks he won the game for the team, which obviously he contributed heavily. We probably wouldn't have won without him either, but my team's positioning is atrocious. I don't think I can understate that enough. The fact that I'm the only ship here is not a good thing. It's just lucky for my team. I know what I'm doing in a destroyer, and I'm not going to suicide into that Shimakaze. In fact, I don't know really what I'm going to do at this point. We're stuck inside of the cap. We're contesting it, at least from the Shima. The Shima can't torp us because there's an island between us, but we see the Pommern out there. And those torpedoes sailing in that direction, by the way, were not for the Pommern. I'm well aware they don't have the range. They were to catch the Shima if he came around the island, which of course he did not. So we're going to have to reevaluate now. We notice on the other side of the map that the friendly destroyer is entering the Delta cap. So if he takes that, then at least we'll have 2 caps, and if Shima takes this one, well, we should be okay. The thing that worries me, though, is that we've lost sight of the Pommern. He's pushing in, and he may very well be coming toward this cap. We also can't see the Yamato or anything else that might be concealed behind that smoke screen. So this all basically adds up to one thought in my mind, which is we must leave the cap just in case these ships are about to push into us and we die. And it looks like the Pommern is in fact pushing in. Shimakaze spots us, but we decide that we're not going to get a good lucrative shot on him, so we elect to not shoot, which means we don't get spotted by the Pommern as the Shima goes around the corner, and we don't remain spotted, thanks to the gunfiring penalty. Little calculations you need to make constantly when you're playing destroyers. If we were still spotted, we probably would be taking a lot of damage right now, and that wouldn't be good. But what to do? Well, on the bright side, my team has secured Delta, so that gives us both Delta and Charlie, and we secured it before the Shima was able to take Alpha. So we should be able to build up a points lead and maintain it, so long as we don't lose too many ships. In fact, only one ship has been lost in this battle, a cruiser on the red team. And now we get a stroke of luck. We spot the Gearing, who has decided, after taking the Bravo cap apparently, that now is a great time to suicide, despite the fact that there are 9 minutes left to go in the game. He charges straight out in front of a Wooster. To his credit, I suppose he does manage to torpedo the Wooster, but was it worth losing your ship to do that? I don't really think so. Unfortunately, we don't get the killing blow on the Gearing. That honor goes to somebody else, but for some inexplicable reason, the Shimakaze decides now is the time to open up gunfire at the Kleber. And even prior to the buff, where the Kleber got more of these reload boosters, Kleber was a much better gunboat than Shima. It certainly has more guns, and they do hit harder. So why the Shima has decided he wants to suicide into me, I don't know. Perhaps he's a fan of the channel. But Bilbo Baggins, if you're watching this video, my advice to you in the future would be, you got way better concealment than me. Don't chase me trying to shoot at me with one of your guns. Go into one of the capture circles and outspot me for your team so I can't take it. In any case, poor Shima over here has realized his error. It's too little too late. He's stopping, he's reversing. Our shells actually break one of his guns. And, well, obviously he stands no chance whatsoever. Just one more shot is going to take him out. And I want you to note in both of these games that we watched, I took out all of the destroyers, essentially. Both destroyers on both of the enemy teams in this game. And this leads me into the real point I want to make with this, because obviously this is not impressive damage that I've done by any means, at least in terms of raw damage totals. But in the last game, we did get over 3,000 XP, and in this one, we're going to get 2,700, which is going to be even more than the Musashi on our team, who is going to end up getting a Kraken, and there's a couple other ships on my team that, despite their initial terrible positioning, are going to do well over 2,000 base XP, so that's fantastic. Nevertheless, we're not going to get a huge amount of damage, but we did do a huge amount of damage to the enemy destroyers. And that's the point. That is what the Kleber ultimately is the most useful for if you're going to build it as a gunboat. Its ability to do rapid burst damage to enemy destroyers with the use of this main battery reload booster consumable is the thing that makes this destroyer so good at the legendary tier. It's not the torpedoes, it's the guns. And in fact, I would argue, or I would submit to you, that when it comes to destroyer play, the guns are far more important than the torpedoes. Why? Because you're not killing the enemy destroyers with your torpedoes, not consistently anyway, and not unless they're complete spuds. If you want to take out an enemy destroyer with your destroyer, then for that you want good guns. And with the main battery reload booster consumable, the very high maximum HE damage, and the fantastic fire chance, Kleber's guns are very good indeed, and this Azerlane San Louis commander makes them better by providing you with extra reload boosters. And the only real downside is you don't have Unstoppable. But you didn't really see that come into play this battle or the last battle. It will certainly come into play at some points, and it may even result in my demise if my engine gets blown up and I'm still spotted while dead in the water. But all in all, I like this build, and I'm going to keep it on the Kleber in order to keep the efficacy of the guns where they're at. Because again, it's the guns that are going to win you games in destroyers much more often than the torpedoes are. Not only because the guns are what you're going to use to deal with the enemy destroyers, which is one of the most important things you can do in your destroyer, but also because gunfire is much more reliable and less subject to RNG than torpedoes. Anytime you launch a torpedo from your ship, it has to travel in a straight line from its launcher to your target. And in that time of travel, your target can easily change speed or easily change direction and completely avoid the torpedoes. Plus, RNG dictates how much torpedoes spread. and often you'll see torpedoes spread just enough to leave a convenient cruiser or battleship-sized gap in between them, and thus guns, which you aim, they take much less time to reach the target, and even if RNG causes the dispersion to be poor and some of the shells to miss, you're still going to be landing shells way more than you're ever going to be landing torps. And you see, with the rest of this game, after taking out both of the enemy destroyers and essentially securing the win conditions for my team, we just spent the rest of this game farming up some ships. We're going to do over 100,000 damage just with the Kleber's guns. So, you know, it's an indication that there is damage to be had out of these guns, for sure. We just need a game where we have an opportunity to do that damage, and I'm sure that game will come. I intend to keep playing the Kleber in this configuration until I can get more of a flashy, spicy game. These two games weren't necessarily spicy, but I think they were both pretty well played in terms of destroyer tactics on my part, which is, unfortunately, something that I'm not seeing happen too often in the game. My greatest advice to destroyer players would be try to stay alive for the entire game. You'll be much more useful to your team if you do, and you'll improve my enjoyment to this game immensely if I find you on my team. In any case, we finished top on the leaderboard thanks to our taking out of the destroyers, once again just hammering home the fact that we scored better than the ship with a Kraken. That's because that's how important destroyer gunboat work can be. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.